We are live.
Hello and welcome everybody to the July 1st, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. If we can have a roll call, please.
Yes, Chair Gutierrez,
Here.
Vice Chair Hogan,
Here.
Secretary Clow,
Here.
Commissioner Garcia,
Here.
Commissioner Picarello,
Here.
Commissioner Setenia,
Present.
and Commissioners Faulkner and Lawrence are excused. Mr. Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you so much. Moving on to the Pledge of Allegiance. Vice Chair Hogan, if you'd lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance, please.
Happy to. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hogan. Approval of the agenda. Any changes from staff?
Chair, no changes. I just wanted to, on the record, during the roll call, I want to acknowledge that Commissioner Amanda Chavez has resigned from the Planning Commission. And so she will no longer be, and we'll have one vacancy and be working to fix that. But as far as the agenda goes, there are no changes from staff. Thank you.
Thank you. We'll miss her and hopefully that vacancy gets filled in a fast manner. Any changes from the commission?
Mr. Chairman, I'll move approval of the agenda.
Thank you. That's Vice Chair Hogan. If I can have a second, please.
Commissioner Garcia will second.
Okay, and if we can have a roll call, Melissa, please.
Yes, Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Picarello,
Yes.
Commissioner Setenia.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Moving on to the approval of minutes from the June 3rd, 2021 Planning Commission meeting. Changes from staff.
Chair, there's no changes.
Thank you. Any changes from the commission? No changes. I'll take a motion, please.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioner Hogan motions to approve the meeting's minutes.
Commissioner Setania to second.
Thank you. If we can have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Vice Chair Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Picarello,
Yes.
Commissioner Setenia.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you. Moving on, no old business, so we'll be on new business. And our first new business is case number 2021-3651 pod storage facility. Donna Wynant is the case planner, case manager, and if you'd like to go ahead, Donna.
Great, thank you. I could do a shared screen. Let's see. Okay, good evening, everyone. Chair Gutierrez and planning commissioners. This is case number 2021-3651. And pod storage facility development plan. James W. Siebert and Associates, Inc., who is the agent for CCSF 599 LLC, who is a property owner. They're requesting development plan approval for a pod storage facility on approximately 4.47 acres. The proposal consists of 52,800 square feet of building area to be constructed in 2 phases. Phase 1 will consist of a 40,000 square foot building, and phase 2 will consist of 12,800 square feet of building area or outdoor storage space. That's or outdoors. Yeah.
I apologize for interrupting you, but I'm not sure if you had already started a screen share. We didn't get it on our end.
Okay, sorry about that.
Sorry to interrupt you.
No, thank you. I'm glad you did. Okay. There you go. Is that, can you see that now?
Yes, Donna, thanks.
I'm so sorry. That's I just wanted to jump right in there. And two, I think what was said at the beginning, yeah, I'm just noticing that the location on this top header box here is, it should say 4900 Hart Road. So my apologies. I don't know how I missed that. But okay, so I just won't read that case caption again, but basically gives you the basics of the case. But do want to mention that, see if I can get my Okay. The second part of this, which is not under review by the Planning Commission, but they are asking for a lot line adjustment. And that involves these two lots at the end of Hart Road. There's lot 4 and 5, and they're just reconfiguring their lot, which is lot 5, which is 4900 Hart Road. They're taking just a little under a quarter of an acre of slice off of the one to the north, and that'll still remain vacant between it and between the proposed development and FedEx further to the north. And this gives them a better lot configuration to lay out their proposed development. So that's what that's about. And that will be reviewed administratively by the land use staff and the director. So as usual, we recommend, we lay out the motions for this case. We recommend approval with the conditions of approval as outlined in this report. The two motions will be required in this case: approve or deny the development plan for case number 2021-3651, subject to the required general findings and subject to the conditions of approval and technical corrections recommended by staff in section 2 and exhibit A of the staff report. And secondly, approve or deny the findings of fact and conclusions of law for case number 2021-3651 as shown in exhibit C of this report. So again, I just wanted to show you the configuration here of the two lots, 4900 Hart Road and 4800 Hart Road. So these are the two lots. We will be looking at a lot line adjustment. The lot line, if you can't really see it, but the existing lot line kind of comes down like this, almost like parallel to this lot line where FedEx is. And instead of that configuration, it's just to take it up this way. And it gives you probably just a little bit more frontage along Hart Road. And as you'll see, their entrance into the development, ingress, egress comes in this way. The building's here and it comes around here to the cul-de-sac. So conditions of approval in this case, there weren't a lot of comments from the DRT, but basically I just wanted to draw to your attention, bring to your attention the two that we laid out here for conditions 4 and 5. Per subsection 14-8.5C3 in outdoor storage yards and salvage yards, a solid wall or fence at least 6 feet in height is required. And there's also with access only through solid gates that are kept closed when not in use shall be erected. So the wall shall be erected around the entire yard, the wall or fence. No object shall be stacked or stored higher than the minimum height of the enclosing wall or fence. And secondly, stating the obvious, the approval of the development plan is contingent upon the lot line adjustment of lot 5 to be reviewed and approved administratively. Let's see, so let's see if I can get this right. Okay, so this is the area in its context, as you can see, looking north, 599 here, Airport Road here, and then as it switches over beyond 599 is Paseo Real. And then you have Aviation Drive coming in off of Paseo Real and leading into the airport and where it dead ends. So the airport's way over here. So this Hart Business Park is all of this area here that was approved years ago. And it consists of 11 lots. The only development here is FedEx. This house that was there was just demolished last week. As I checked on the site, I noticed they were demolishing that. So it's a wide open spaces out there. And Pod's the storage facility wants to locate here, as mentioned. This does end in a cul-de-sac. However, there is an emergency drive. It's gated here and gated up here, but that gives access to Aviation Drive. And again, this is all city-owned airport, municipal airport, Santa Fe Airport there. So getting back to my right side up here, let's see. I think I'll do it. Okay. So again, I mentioned this in the report about the screening. That's pretty important. You know, what they're doing again is they're doing a let's go over here. They're doing a two-phase kind of approach, and they don't want to come back later, you know, like they made a statement, you know, 40,000 square foot building in the first phase, and then they want to do either an addition onto that building, so that would be 12,800 square feet, or to do some outdoor storage to the north of the building. So you'll see that on the site plan. So essentially, we reviewed the dimensional standards and it complies with those. It meets the setback requirements. There is something in the height standards. I just want to mention briefly, their building is 1 story at 45 feet. The height limit is 65 feet. So, you know, the taller the building, the more you have to account for additional setbacks, and that math is done there, which it complies with. So the dimensional standards here, including the setbacks, they meet those, maximum lot coverage and open space. Finally, the parking. Now that's an interesting one because, you know, warehouse development, you think of, you know, mini storage and other kinds of warehouse requirements for parking, 1 space per 500 square feet. But the code allows down here in this asterisk, it says under the category of industrial service and storage for other industrial and industrial parks, other industrial uses and industrial parks, parking may be determined by the city. And so the applicant did make a case that no, they didn't need 106 spaces for this huge warehouse, you know, with these huge objects, which nobody comes to visit. This is not how this is set up, as you'll hear from the applicant. But instead, they did a study, or they looked at other pods developments across the country. I think it was Santa Fe Engineering, through their engineer there, that determined that no, the standard pretty much is 20 spaces for this size of development. So they're providing 21 spaces. So staff looked at that, and we concur with their analysis. So let's see. Sorry, excuse me, I want to get something out of the way here. Okay. Let's see. So the site plan, which just briefly I'll show here, is the principal building. And this area outlined here is where they could potentially add that 12,800 square feet. Yeah, that's 12,800 square feet of building area. Now, these are tall buildings and they do a lot of stacking. You know, all of these squares in here are pods, and they pack them in there and they stack them. It's not like you can take your vehicle or whatever to go in there and visit your stuff. It's just not like that. It's or, you know, to retrieve things. It's really highly, you know, regulated and operated there, which they'll go into. And then this is the area, if they decide in this phase 2, either this, they're going to do this, or they're going to do that, not both. So I just want to make that clear. And here again is their parking area of 21 spaces and their detention pond there. So they meet the standards and the requirements. This is the first case I had where hardly any of the DRT members had anything to say. They said, you know, it looks good. I don't have any comments. So there's really not anything to point out. Got everything in the report there. Any signage, you know, they'll come in under a separate permit, and then their site lighting looks pretty good. I mean, it doesn't look like it spills over at the property lines. So just finally, and I just want to go over this criteria, you know, we always point out the 3 criteria that yes, the Planning Commission is empowered to review this. They're the proper body to do so. And then secondly, let's look at my little thumbnails here. Secondly is criteria 2, that approving the development plan will not adversely affect the public interest. That's the case. I mean, this is an industrial park. This is an industrial area. I mean, there's like scrap yards and gravel yards and a variety of things there. So it fits the area, and it's I think they're counting on it being a good anchor to that business park. So the staff looked at that as being in compliance with Chapter 14 and in line with the general plan for the area. It's just that the general plan just identifies the area for industrial use, and that's what it is. And then finally, criteria 3 is that that it's compatible with and adaptable to building structures and uses of the abutting property and other properties in the vicinity of the premises under consideration. And yes, it is. You know, I should go back to this, and this is the key, which I forgot to mention. You know, the reason why Planning Commissioner is reviewing this is because it's a new development that exceeds 30,000 square feet. Sometimes I forget to state the obvious there, but so anyway, we look at this as meeting these criteria, including the third one, which is compatible with the abutting property. You know, again, FedEx, that's about it. and there's all these other things that it fits the area. So with that, I'd like to turn it back over to you and stand for questions. Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Wynant. Mr. Siebert, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here.
Okay, if you'd like to do your presentation.
Just stop share screening.
And if Melissa could please swear in Mr. Siebert.
Yes. Mr. Siebert, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. And please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jim Siebert. My address is 915 Mercer Street, Santa Fe. Let me ask if Gary Krupnick and Richard Kent and Mike Gomez are on the virtual meeting as well.
Mr. Siebert,
Sorry, yes, Mr. Siebert, we can't hear you.
Oh, like that.
And I am working on promoting. I've got Gary Krupnick. I've got two Mike Gomez's. I'm not sure which is the real Mike. And I missed the name of the third person you wanted me to bring. Was it Richard?
It was Richard Kent.
Great.
Jim, are we going to really need them to all speak, or is it just you're going to give a presentation, and if they'd like to chime in or there's questions directed to them?
Yeah, I just would like to have them sworn in if they want to. If there are questions, then they're sworn in to answer them.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Sally, can I go ahead and swear them in at the same time?
That'd be great. And then if you gentlemen are going to answer questions, if you could just go ahead and state your name and address for the record before you speak later on, that'd be great.
Okay, so Mr. Krupnick, Mr. Gomez, and Mr. Kent, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimonies you're about to give are the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Oh,
Are they muted?
yeah, Miss.
Yes, Richard
Okay.
Richard Kent is here. I do.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Krupnick and Gomez, you both appear to be muted. Can you unmute? And
I do.
Thank you.
that was Mr. Gomez. Mr. Krupnick?
Gary Krupnick, I do.
Thank you so much. And again, when you speak, if you could state your name and address for the record. Thank you.
So Donna did a very comprehensive description of the project, and I don't want to be redundant, so I'll probably shorten up my presentation because a lot of it would be a repeat of what she's gone over. But I do have a short program, and we'll go through that fairly quickly. Let's go to the next one. Yeah. So just to describe to you where it is, this is Airport Road down here. This is Aviation Drive, and then airport, then it goes to the airport, obviously. The Hart Road that's been completed within the park is this segment right here. We'll go to the next one. And this is a blow-up image of the park itself. This is a fully developed park. It's got all utilities, roads, sidewalks, landscape. It's all there. So there's no any kind of offsite infrastructure that we have to provide for this particular site. The pod site sits here. There is a remainder parcel that sits here that is part of the lot line adjustment. I won't go over that because Donna did an excellent job. This is FedEx, and interestingly enough, that's been all by itself for 15 years now. So the Hart family is pretty excited about pods coming in, hoping that this will begin to stimulate other development in the park. So we'll go to the next slide. Yeah, let's skip that one. So this is the site plan that Donna talked about. And I won't belabor it. The two things that I would like to point out is there are ponds on site. There's a pond here, and there's a pond here. And when the park was developed, there actually was various locations for ponding off-site. But in this case, the decision was that we'd actually put the ponds within within the lot itself. And the reason that is twofold. It's easier to maintain them if they're on site. And also you can take advantage of the landscape to irrigate the landscape by putting it around the ponds. The access point, one of the reasons for that quirky little jog here is they didn't want the trucks coming in and out at a curve on the roadway. So that's the reason you see that little jog. The other thing that's happening is it currently ends in a cul-de-sac, but when they developed the park, they had a 20-foot base course road that goes back over to Aviation Drive. That serves as the secondary access for the development. Should anything occur, then the current access to Aviation Drive gets blocked. They have another access to get over to Aviation Drive. And also it provides for a loop water line. So the water line is connected at two different places. So if you have any kind of interruption, it still has flow from another point. Let's go to the next one. So this is the elevations, and they did add a kind of a portico here on different locations on the building. It was necessary actually to get the architectural points that were required. And the one thing I need to point out is it's a darker brown color. And the committee had some concerns that the Architectural Review Committee for the park had some concerns about this color. We think it's kind of represented a little darker than it really would be in real life, just because of the nature of trying to put these colors on paper. But the one thing I did want to point out is that if we can't come, and we have ordered actual samples of the panels with the colors on them, so the committee, the Architectural Review Committee, can look at it and make a decision. But should they decide that they don't like this color, we would probably be going to a little lighter color. And I just wanted to point that out to the commission, because sometimes in the past it's really kind of become an issue, and I just wanted to make that very clear. And that's the end of my presentation. Gary Krupnik is the developer of this project and the owner of the Pods company. They're all over the United States. And he can, if you're interested in how the actual Pods operates, he's much better at giving you a description of that than I am. And Richard Kent is the architect that put the plans together. And of course, Mike Gomez, who is the civil engineer. Gary, you want to talk to the operation?
Sure. Would the board like me to take you through a typical cycle of from the order to completion on this, or
well, I think how do people use the pods, and what kind of access do they have to the pods inside the building, and how all that operation works. I think that's probably more of interest to the commission.
Mr. Krupnik, if you would please state your address, Gary Krupnik, for the record before proceeding.
Sure, Gary Krupnik, and it's 687 Old Willets Path, Hauppauge, New York.
Thank you very much.
Right, so there are two types of pods that are being marketed right now. They pretty much, let's call it the domestic, which could be used either way, that has a roll-up door, and they come in three sizes, everything works off a 16-foot length. The pod itself is 8 feet wide, 8 feet high, and most typical that you'll see in people's driveways is with the roll-up door. It's a blue door. And so you would call an 800 number, request a pod be delivered. It could be either an 8, a 12, or 16-foot in length pod, always 8 foot high, 8 foot wide. They would take an empty pod from the outside of the building. That's the purpose of the outside storage. Put it on a truck, flatbed truck, and a driver that they utilize a forklift with that. And the driver would take it to your house or business and put it in your driveway or wherever you direct them to put it. When the customer loads the pods themselves, packs everything any way they want to pack it, and locks the door on the pod, calls the pod 800 number again, schedules a pickup. The pod is then brought back and contractually put into a facility such as this, which is a climatized, secured, locked, under surveillance security building. There's a prohibition in the leases that restricts any of the pod users to coming into the building. So they get no access to the pod itself inside the building. The pods self-stack. We have a crush factor of 5. We only go up 4 high in the building, but they stack one on top of another. Most commonly, let's say, you've seen, I'm sure everybody's seen these, what's called C-tainers or Connex boxes, and the way they stack. This is the same frame. It's an old steel frame and a steel pallet, and they self-stack. So there's no racking or anything like that. From a life safety standpoint, when they're stacked about 10 to 12 inches apart from each other. And the building itself has got a high density ESFR sprinkler system. It's a 1 head per 100 square feet of ceiling space. And each head puts out 125 gallons a minute. So we're basically deluging the building, and the space between the pods themselves serves as a water wall, because the water comes right down and sheds on all sides of the pods in the area that the head goes off. So if you want access to your pod to retrieve something, you've got to call or go online, make an appointment. They take your pod out of the building. There is a charge for it. Put it outside. They give you a day and a time that you can come. You come and access your pod or your goods inside, because you've locked the pod. Ownership has no access to your pod at any time. So it's not like a mini warehouse where there's always a master key and they can go into your unit and you come into the building, etc. The unit's taken outside. You come by on a specific time, access the pod. They usually take 30, 40 minutes or so to go through what they want to get. And then the pod is put back in, you lock it again and the pod is put back into the building until you call for it to be delivered. You can, and about 1/3 of their revenue nationwide is derived from long haul at pods. So if you're in Santa Fe and you're going to move to San Diego, you go online and you set up for them to deliver that pod from Santa Fe to San Diego. It'll be the same pod, locked and stocked the way you did it in your own driveway. So that's one of the services that they provide. Pod's company itself, about 5 years ago, was acquired by the Ontario Pension Fund. The Ontario Pension Fund is a $200 billion pension fund. They collect all of the pension in the province of Ontario, Canada, and they reinvest it to be able to meet the requirements of their pension setup for the province. They are considered one of the most liquid, strongest financial operations in the world at what they're doing. They just acquire businesses, build them up. They don't buy them to sell them. They're not investment bankers. They buy them to retain them, grow them, and use them to support their pension fund, Canadian pension fund. They're mostly public employees that go through that fund. It's a listed S&P firm. It's very well known in the financial circles and carries an extremely strong financial rating. So that's actually, I do not own the Pods franchise. I own the buildings. I develop the buildings for them. I lease the buildings to them on a long-term basis, and they operate the buildings under their corporate umbrella. At one time, when Pods was first formed back in the mid-90s, the original guy didn't have enough money to basically keep growing the company. So he started selling franchises. And each one of those leases, franchise agreements had basically a one-liner in it. It said that at any time corporate wants to buy out your position, geographic position, because they're given to markets, they can. They get an appraisal, you get an appraisal. If there's any dispute.
Mr. Krupnik?
Sure.
If you can just wrap it up, I think we were interested in the building part, and I think you covered that with the sprinklers and
Okay.
the way it's built. We appreciate that. I'd love to stay on here, but we have another hearing, so if you'd wrap it up.
Right, then, I mean, I've completed the operation of the pod facility, I think. If anybody has any questions, I'll answer them. I thought you might be interested in the strength of the company that's behind the lease, so.
Thank you so much. Mr. Siebert, anybody else?
I think we'll just be here for any questions you may have.
Thank you so much. This is a public hearing. If anybody from the public would like to testify on this case, please raise your hand. I see there is one phone call listener, and I don't know if it's for this case or the next one, but if Mr. Burke, if you'll tell them how to get our attention if they want to talk.
Thank you, Chair and Commissioners. Good evening, members of the public. If you'd like to participate in this case, the PODS development plan, you can do so by using the raised hand function. If you're an attendee right now and you're watching us on Zoom, or if you're calling in, you can press *9, and that will actually be the raised hand function, and we'll call on you and unmute you, and then you'll be sworn in and be given 2 minutes to speak. So if you'd like to speak on this, go ahead and raise your hand now.
I don't see any hands. Anybody going once? Bert, do you see any hands?
Mr. Chair, Commissioners, I don't see any hands.
Going twice. Okay, and I don't see any hands, so I'm going to close the public hearing and turn it over to the commission.
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to hear the applicant talk a little bit about the screening of the property at the exterior and what their intention is for that.
The around the area that where they're actually going to store the pods outside, there would be a 6-foot cedar fence, and the gates would have to be solid gates on either side. And the reason, I mean, the pods are 8 feet, but the reason that the fence is 6 is that the site has actually been sunk in the ground about 2 feet. So what's actually visible is only, something that would be six feet high around the perimeter of the property.
Thank you. And will that fence be treated with something? Those cedar fences don't seem to hold up too well in the sun. And I think, what the presentation to 599 is, something we ought to be looking at seriously. It's part of our gateway. So anyway, anything that would help screen that from the view from 599 and something that's going to look good over time, not in 5 years be twisted and the board's fallen down and things like that.
Yeah, I'll have Richard Kent speak to that, but in this case, this is at the opposite end of the park from 599, and the 599 at that point that you would have visibility is about 10 feet below grade, so there'd be no visibility whatsoever from 599 of this building, even given its height.
Okay, thanks.
Richard, can you speak to the treatment of the fence?
Well, Gary, can you, do you know what we're going to do with the fence? Honestly, I'm not sure how you want to treat it.
The fences, we generally set the fence on steel poles. So what the chairperson, I think, was referring to should not occur. It's usually the poles that rot out in the ground, and then the wind loading picks up the fence and it starts to come apart. We've not had any problem with that. We do maintain the properties to the highest levels. It is a secure site for us, and it's a contractual obligation to our customers. So the cedar fence can be treated. We'll look into some form of a chemical treatment that is environmentally friendly to seal it, if that's something that the city would like to see happen.
Yeah, something like linseed oil or something that's easy to apply, every couple of years or so. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Vice Chair Hogan. Mr. Garcia.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I just have a couple of questions in regards to, so the lot line adjustment is mostly in regards to the ingress and egress coming on to the main road there. Is that correct? I don't know if you can answer that.
Yeah, that's correct. What we found with business parks, and I've done several in Santa Fe, is that no matter how you draw the lot lines, they're always wrong, because somebody's going to come in and their building doesn't fit the lot. So it's pretty typical that we're having to adjust lot lines almost in every case with business parks.
Thank you. The other question. So the emergency drive on the back, is that a locked gate, or is it accessible by others to come into the property or exit the property?
Well, it's been a long time since I've actually paid attention to that, but it's my understanding, at least when we did it, that it was a crash gate. That if you actually need to get out, that you just simply knock the gate down.
Okay. It's a pretty big building, and the other question I would have is in regards to maybe fire safety. And there's a lot of there's going to be a lot of goods in there. The type of fire suppression, I think, is that, can somebody elaborate on that a little bit?
Well, this is probably the most advanced fire protection system of any building I've looked at, but I'm going to have Gary Krupnick respond to that.
So the system that's placed in all the pods around the country, new generation pods such as this, is an ESFR system. It's an early suppression system, and it's considered pretty much a deluge system. It exceeds the NFPA requirements, and it actually is designed to FM, factory mutual, which is the highest standard you can get for this commodity. Each head on a 10-foot by 10-foot grid at the ceiling puts out 125 gallons a minute. It's 125 gallons a minute. And the containers are separated 10 to 12 inches vertically, so it effectively puts a water wall down on all sides of the containers should a head go off in any one of the areas. In addition, on the perimeter, every 100 feet, as required by the national code, there's an exit door. At every exit door on the inside we put a standpipe so that anybody coming in to fight the fire, as soon as they open the door, they usually carry a hose on their shoulder, and they sock right onto the sandpipe, and they can put a water wall in front of them as they progress through the building, and then they use the water hose to follow their way back out to the same door to get back out again. So it's pretty much, and it's on a central station. It's got all of the typical smokes and enunciator panels and that type of thing. But it is the highest level that you can get. It is an FM standard.
Thank you very much for that clarification. The last question is probably, I guess, going to be for city staff. Is this industrial area has been separated from 599 to the connecting area across the way, and is there any kind of an idea when that's going to be connected? Whoever from staff can kind of answer that.
Chair, Commissioners, Commissioner Garcia, that's a great question. With the pavilions, there's a platted subdivision or an approved subdivision. It's an industrial park called the Pavilions, and it has not been developed. As part of that approval, there was supposed to be some improvement of Jaguar towards the airport, and then the city was going to go ahead and fund more of that improvement and build it completely to the airport. Right now, I know that is a priority project for our public works. I'm not sure the exact timing, as we don't have a new traffic engineer on board, and that was the old traffic engineers, one of their initiatives or one of their projects they were working on. So I do know that there has been conversations with that within the last year or two of this connection to the airport. So that's what's going on with that.
Thank you. I don't have any more questions.
Thank you. Commissioner Setenia.
Yes, I move that we approve the development plan for case number 2021-3651, subject to the required general findings and subject to the conditions of approval and technical corrections recommended by staff in section 2 and exhibit A with the staff report. In addition, I also recommend that I move that we approve the findings and facts of conclusions of law for case number 2021-3651 as shown in exhibit C of this report.
Thank you, Commissioner Setenia. I have a second.
Commissioner Garcia, or go ahead, Vice Chair, you can make the second.
Either way. Commissioner Hogan will second that.
Thank you. Sally, we good doing both findings of fact and the motion at the same time?
Sufficiently clear for me. I just want to note that if any commissioners want to move to split the motion, I'm probably calling that wrong, but you are allowed to separate it out. But if everyone's comfortable, you can proceed to vote.
Okay. Melissa, if you take a vote, and if any commissioners are uncomfortable voting on both, please let us know.
Okay, Commissioner Clow,
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia,
Yes.
Commissioner Hogan,
Yes.
Commissioner Picarello,
Yes.
Commissioner Setenia.
Yes.
Mr. Chair, the motion has been approved.
Thank you so much. Thank you, guys.
Thank you, board members.
Moving on, we'll be on case 2020-2639, 1160 Camino de Cruz Blanca Telecommunications Facility. Mr. Esquivel is the case manager.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can everybody see my screen?
Yes.
This is case number 2020-2639-1660 Camino de la Cruz Blanca Telecommunication Facility, Gravity Pad Partners, LLC, agent for AT&T and FirstNet, NML 0255. The applicant requests approval of a new telecommunication facility with a waiver to height pursuant to section 1462E telecommunications facilities. The property is approximately 19 acres, zoned R1 PUD, residential, 1 dwelling unit per acre, planned unit development, and is within the historic design review overlay. The Land Use Department is recommending approval subject to conditions which are located in the memo and in section 2. There are three motions required for this case. The first one is to approve or deny the telecommunication facility under subsection 1462E, subject to conditions of approval recommended by staff. Approve or deny the waiver to height pursuant to subsection 1462E8, subject to conditions of approval recommended by staff. And approve or deny the findings of fact and conclusions of law listed in Exhibit A. Gravity Pad Partners, LLC agent for AT&T FirstNet, are requesting, their original request was an 85-foot tower that was presented to the Historic District. Their original proposal to us was 75 feet, which was a monopine tower. Because of their process through the State Historic Preservation, the FCC, they have since dropped it to 65 feet. But instead of a monopine, they're requesting a monopole. The difference is the antennas are open and can be viewed from afar, whereas as a monopine or some other kind of stealth technology, we typically are hiding those. A telecommunication facility includes equipment and antennas. Typically, there's a transceiver, something to receive and transmit that make up the base station. The applicant has complied with all process requirements for Chapter 14 to appear before the Planning Commission, pre-application meetings, early neighborhood notification meetings, and they've provided notice requirements pursuant to subsection 1431H. The proposed tower is going to be located, I believe that's the Atalaya Trail. It's approximately 150 feet north to Los Merendores, 637 feet to single-family residences to the east, and the school's tennis courts and other recreational facilities. It's about 924 feet, and then it's 443 feet just north of the school. And then this picture is also located in your packet. This is just a bigger picture of that. Now with that, that's pretty much the extent of the memo. What I'd like to do is provide just a little overview of how the telecommunication industry typically covers a city or a county in some areas. What they'll do is they create a grid, sort of it's not a perfect hexadecimal grid, but what they'll do is they'll go and purchase frequencies from the FCC. It goes through auction, and they either acquire them at the auction, or they'll acquire companies that have these frequencies, and they add them to their collection. And when they're covering a city, if you can look at these numbers as frequencies rather than numbers, what they'll do is they'll reuse their frequencies over and over again until they cover the area that they're providing service to. And they'll separate frequencies far enough away so that they won't crash into each other and create a problem. So there's different towers in different areas that will have different frequencies so that they don't crash. When a tower has reached its capacity, what they'll do is they'll break up that one tower and provide more towers. And usually this means that there are a lot of user equipment in the area that is taking up a lot of the frequencies that have been allocated to each one of those sectors that the antennas are located on. The frequencies are typically broken up into channels. And when all the channels have been taken up by the Internet of Things, your smart devices, your cell phones, your connected appliances, your wearables, your health monitors, there are various, your cars, various things that are going to use, mobile technology that could take up that bandwidth. And when all those channels have been taken up, they've reached capacity. A good example of this is when Verizon did their unlimited service not too far back, and they didn't build their network enough to handle that kind of a bandwidth. And people were having problems sending texts, sending pictures. The police and fire were having problems connecting to the city services. So making sure that the equipment is built up to support the user equipment in the area is typically what forces these towers to be broken up into these smaller segments. This is kind of an overview of what the city looks like when we look at what's being built within the city of Santa Fe. These dots, they represent various telecommunications sites that have been built up over time. I think our GIS department tried to render a picture that showed all of them, but there are a lot of dots under dots under dots because some of those represent towers where you might have multiple telecommunication companies on top of it. A good example is the blue dot at the corner of Airport Road, Rodeo Road, and Cerrillos Road, where that big tower is. And there you'll have most of the telecommunication companies, and that's only showing one dot instead of all of the dots. With that, we'll just come to a brief description of the differences between 4G and 5G. Right now, most of us are working on 4G. 4G is a range between 850 megahertz and 2100 megahertz. 5G has there are two types of 5Gs. You've got the mid-band and the high band. The mid-band is called sub-6, and that is a range of between 410 megahertz to about 7125 megahertz. And the high band is about 24 gigahertz to 52 gigahertz. The difference between the three, if you can think of the high band as a water hose and the amount of data that can flow through that water hose is quite a lot. The sub-6 is going to be sort of like your ice cream straw. It's going to carry a lot of data, but not as much as your high band. And then you got your 4G, which is a typical straw, which is carrying a lot of data, but not as much as your mid-band. Your 4G is able to penetrate buildings fairly easily, depending on the frequency. The lower the frequency, the easier the penetration. The higher the frequency, the more trouble it has. Like Windows, sometimes frequencies aren't going to travel very well through Windows. They don't do it. Your sub-6 will also penetrate some of the buildings relatively easy. However, your high band, your millimeter wave in the 5G, if you look at the diagram, it's not going to be able to penetrate buildings. In fact, it gets interrupted quite easily, which is going to require a lot of nodes or cell towers to be placed in and around all kinds of buildings. And for that, when we look at all of these towers, the intent of our code is to try and hide a lot of the ugliness and the industrial look that a lot of these towers can have. And a prime example of a good stealth is at the Methodist Church off Cordova Road, where you see the red and the cross. Inside that is a telecommunication facility. If you didn't know that was there, you would just think it was part of the building. Other types, these are two Verizon cubes on top of the building. They're hidden or hiding the two telecommunication facilities on top of the roof. And those just look like your basic rooftop appurtenances. Some other types of hiding towers or antennas is painting on the color of the buildings so that when you're far off in a distance, they're not going to really look too industrial. They're still visible, but they're not as bad. And then there are other towers that are just co-locations. And because you're so used to looking at these power poles and what hangs on those power poles, these aren't too offensive, and they blend in, pretty easy. And then there are those that we can't do much about at all. They're too tall. Some of these were built prior to any kind of adaptation to trying to hide them or stealth technology. And then some you just can't do anything with. And this is the one at Airport Road, Cerrillos Road, and Rodeo Road, known as the Dawson Tower. And with that concludes the presentation. The applicants has provided a lot of documentation that has been included in the packet that shows what they're proposing, and what they're proposing is again a monopole with the antenna showing. And with that, I'll answer any questions you might have.
Thank you, Mr. Escobar. Gravity Pad Partners, the applicant, you have a presentation for us?
Yes, hello, everyone. My name is Sean Milks. I don't know if I need to be sworn in or.
Yes, please.
Yes. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Sean Milks, 205 Tierra de Corrales, New Mexico, 87048.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. So my name is Sean Milks. I'm a local resident of New Mexico. I'm one of the principal owners of Gravity Pad. And we have been building sites across New Mexico for about 16 years now. I've been in the industry for a little over 24 years. And so we've done quite a few of the sites in Santa Fe. The one at the Methodist Church that Dan showed earlier was one of the ones that I designed and built probably about 10 years ago. And in fact, that site talks to the proposed site that we're putting up here or proposing tonight. I have been working personally on this search ring, what we call St. John's College, since 2009. We've gone through probably hundreds of renditions of trying to solve this puzzle, which is St. John's College, the neighboring communities and roads. There currently is a desperate need for coverage in the area. And what I am trying to do is build something that can accommodate all of the FCC wireless carriers, including the police and fire with the emergency response with FirstNet. And but that's being very difficult. Obviously, no one wants to see the sites. And we are trying to and have been trying to work with the neighborhoods. I think we have had 2, maybe even 3 early neighborhood notifications. We've met several times on site. We've flown drones, and ultimately, no matter where we put it on the campus or anywhere in the neighborhood, someone is going to object. So what we try to do is work with the carriers. We went back, as Dan stated before, we were able to lower the site 15 feet. So it just kind of peaks up over the tree line because the trees, of course, will block it. The reason that we went from the larger monopine versus a monopole is simply size. The monopole is significantly smaller than a monopine. We've all seen the 40-foot monopine off of 599. It looks horrible. Some of the other trees in and around the state, they really stick out, especially when it needs to be significantly taller. A monopole, yeah, it's not going to the mass of it is quite a bit smaller. And so as we work with the SHPO department and what we felt was the least obtrusive site possible. The ground equipment is going to be covered by a 6-foot coyote fence, which would match the existing fence that's out there. And essentially all of the ground equipment would be hidden behind that. We, as I stated before, have exhausted pretty much every scenario and possibility, from try to co-locate on an existing building, which would not work. Tried to go on an existing water tank, which was too high. Tried to put it in different areas on the college, which was not approved by the college. And really we had trouble with meeting our coverage objectives. The area that we have chosen that is proposed tonight is the best possible solution to cover not only the college as well as the neighbors and the surrounding neighborhoods as well as roads. So with that, I am here to hopefully answer any and all questions that you may have.
Thank you, Mr. Milks. This is a This is a public hearing. If there's anybody in the public that would like to testify on this case, please raise your hand. And for the one phone call in, *9.
Chair Gutierrez, we've got quite a few hands raised, and I don't know if before we start if you wanted to impose a time limit, if we want to try and run a timer for public comment tonight.
I see 1, 2. There's 8 of them. Do you see the same 8?
I've got 7 so far, plus 1 commissioner.
Oh no, that's mine. You can lower that one. I raised.
One commissioner, that's you. Okay, so seven so far, but there are potentially some others who might wish to chime in as we go along.
Anybody else thinking of testifying on this case?
Well, we've got 8 at the moment.
So no, let's just go with the 8. Those of you that are gonna testify, if it's already been said, please cut it short or don't repeat it. At this point, we won't put it down. We'll let them go ahead and start.
All right, so I'll go ahead and unmute folks in the order that they've appeared. I think they're in the order they raised their hands, and everyone will need to be sworn in by Melissa and state your name and address for the record before you speak. So our first speaker tonight is Richard Groendyke.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Richard Groendyke. We live at 1128 West Ridge Road in Ponderosa Ridge Development, 1 mile from the site of the cell tower proposal. I believe the cell tower proposal should be granted, and I'd like to state the reasons why. First is public safety. My wife and I have the Dale Ball Trail right out our back door. We see hundreds of folks here. We hike ourselves. We hike today. The telephone reception is abysmal on the Dale Ball Trail up to Atalaya. And hikers, particularly hikers not used to it, oftentimes encounter emergencies, health issue, they fall, in bad weather, they get lost. First responders need to be able to get to them sometimes very quickly. And unless they have cell coverage, that's not really possible. Also, there are drop calls that have occurred. So just in terms of the public safety, for the last 10 years we've been here, it's a real need for those hikers who use the trails around this area. Secondly, I'd like to talk about St. John College needs. There are 400 plus kids there. There are 50 or more faculty. There are visitors. As the mayor said, St. John's College is one of our best community assets. When people come to the college, and I go frequently, the telephone reception is abysmal there. You have to walk around, you drop calls. It's very inconvenient. There are also, though, issues with these young millennials, emergencies with students where they can't get in touch with each other, with their families. We have 20% international kids who really rely on communicating with their families. And it's a real need, and it's been a need for 10 years. And since 2009, the college has been trying to find a remedy. This proposal is the best that we've ever had at St. John's. Let me say this, I have a bias, let me own it. I went to St. John's. I'm a St. John's graduate, so is my wife, and I'm on the board. I've been on the board for a while. But there has been some talk that the reason the college is interested in profit, that there will be a ground lease and there will be payments to the college. But let me assure you, at a board meeting last week, I talked to Mark Roosevelt, the president, yesterday. I'm authorized to tell you this. If the commission approves this proposal for the cell tower, every single dollar, every single bit of any lease payment, we'll all dedicate that to only student scholarships from the Santa Fe area. We're not in this for the money. We really want to increase the students' experience. We want to increase the brand of the college. We really think this is something that is a matter of public safety. And I'd urge you not to think of us as someone who's in this for the money. We are not at all. Lastly, and let me hurry because I don't want to take anyone else's time. You commissioners have to balance here. Obviously, the aesthetics are important to neighbors. I'm one of them. I go by this every day. So do a number of folks I know here. We think in the main that the public safety issues and the number of folks to benefit from the cell tower perhaps outweighs those aesthetic complaints that are absolutely legitimate. No one's going to be in favor from an aesthetic standpoint of a 65-foot tower that cannot really be hidden. So it is what it is. I would just urge you guys to use your best judgment and please stand in balancing that there are points of view in support of the cell tower. I'm one of them, and so is the college. Thank you very much for your consideration.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you, Mr. Grande.
Well, Chair, the next speaker that I have is Christine Guevara. And Christine, you'll need to be sworn and state your name and address, please.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? And please unmute yourself.
Sorry, I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Christine Guevara. My address is 26 Camino de Verdad in Santa Fe. I'm the Executive Director of Campus Health and Wellness for St. John's College. You're going to hear quite a bit of concern about safety this evening, which is the primary reason the community of St. John's College is interested in the cell tower. But I want to emphasize that our safety concern goes well beyond the current student body. You'll hear from our students shortly, and they will share their experiences with you. I want to share with the commission that we are constantly hearing concerns about cell coverage from our prospective families. The number one concern on parents' minds as they consider colleges is the safety of the campus. And every family that visits our campus asks about our cell service. Parents are dissatisfied when they learn that their student is not likely going to be able to call home on their cell while on campus. The student will likely have to leave the campus and find coverage in order to be able to connect with their loved ones. Parents are unsettled when they realize that they may not be able to immediately connect with their child should an urgent situation arise. Families may fall in love with our beloved Santa Fe, but they struggle to commit to our community if concerns for their child's safety are prevalent. In addition, our campus is an open campus, and we welcome community members to enjoy our bookstore, coffee shop, and campus hiking trails. Community members are also reliant on cell coverage should an unforeseen issue occur. Thank you very much for listening to our concerns about safety and for considering the struggle we have to keep our community safe.
Thank you, Christine.
All right. Our next speaker is DJ Campbell, and I will unmute you on my end. You'll need to unmute on yours, and if you could please be sworn in, state your name and address for the record.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Daniel Campbell, 1160 Camino de Cruz, Blanca, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Thank you.
Hi, yes. My name is Daniel Campbell. I'm the Director of Public Safety for St. John's College. I want to start off by saying that I have over 20 plus years as a first responder. I've dealt with multiple situations that concern emergency response. So I'm well aware of the need for good communication. And one of the things that I learned when I first came to St. John's, when I first started, that was one of my concerns that I picked up. One of the very first concerns was the communication issue. So I want to cover a few things that come to mind as far as why we need proper communication, why we need cell coverage. One, our students cannot rely on a landline. We have currently our phone system is so old and so outdated that it would cost us an enormous amount of money to try and replace it. So we need the ability to use our cell phone. In fact, our security officers will forward any calls that come into our switchboard to the cell phone when they're not at the desk. And sometimes we've had several incidents where people cannot reach them because of the coverage. What are some of the threats that I'm concerned with? A few of them are one, human threat. Okay, we can have anything from workplace violence to active shooters on campus, natural threats, animals, natural disasters, emergency notification. We have a system that we use for the students called OmniLearn E2 Campus. What this system does is it allows a student from their mobile device, wherever they are, to actually get on and alert us of an emergency notification just by pressing a couple of buttons. But without the proper cell coverage, this system is useless for those students that are roaming around the campus. I believe Mr. Milks covered this when he mentioned briefly first responders. As a first responder, I know that they rely on cell towers as a way to basically redirect or for the radio systems to work properly. And excuse me, I kind of forget what that term is, but they actually rely on the towers themselves as a repeater, excuse me, that's the word, repeater for their radio systems. The other things that first responders think about too is if we had a situation where we had someone on the trail that needed help, that person might need their cell phone to drop in a pin on their location if their leg's broken or some other injury. And that could help first responders get to them a lot more quick. So one of the things that I also want to talk about is, even though this sounds, and we're speaking from the perspective of St. John's College, we need to keep in mind there's Santa Fe Prep next to us, there's Atalaya Middle School. There's other people that would benefit from the use of this, especially in terms of an emergency, members of the community that are nearby, kids, families that would benefit from this communication, the people that use our trails daily, they're going to benefit from this. So one of the things that I want to leave you with is I can appreciate not wanting to look at a cell tower, but when I think of safety, when I think of human life, when I think of wanting a first responder to get to you, I don't think there's a comparison. So, in my mind, this cell tower absolutely needs to be there for the safety of our students and for the safety of our community. I appreciate you listening to my argument, and thank you.
Thank you, Daniel.
Okay, Mr. Campbell, thank you. Our next speaker is Cesar Cervantes. And Mr. Cervantes, you'll need to be sworn in and state your name and address for the record.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
I'm Cesar Cervantes, Director of Life at St. John's College, and I live at 6 Esquina Road in Santa Fe.
Thank you.
Thanks. So I'll be brief. I just, as Director of Student Life, I oversee an on-call system for our live-in staff, and they're known as senior residents. And they serve as primarily as first responders to any crises or any concern that students may be experiencing. And they walk campus and they just, in partnership with public safety, really ensure the health and safety of our students. And with regularity, I have to check in with them when there is a concern or an issue with the student, or even someone from the public who may be on campus or on a trail or something like that. And with regularity, we drop calls or are not able to connect with one another to help triage the incident case at hand. And so it really is a concern for us. I can think of a number of cases that were either a physical injury or a mental health issue where we lost precious time because we were not able to connect. I have a staff member who was on this call, and she went from her office to her apartment and lost reception. So she probably will not be able to speak, but is trying to get back on now. So again, I just want to reiterate and implore you to consider our request and to grant this. It would really deepen the student experience as well as help us to triage incidents of concern, mental health, physical, and otherwise. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Cesar.
I just want to make a standing apology to everyone whose names I've been butchering and probably will continue to do. Our next speaker is Simran Fappa. And Simran, again, you'll need to be sworn in and state your name and address, please.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Okay, my name is Simran Fappa, and my address is 1160 Camino de Cruz, Blanca, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Thank you.
Hi, I am a student at St. John's College, and I'd love to share some experiences with you all about why having a cell tower would be really beneficial. The first experience is a daily experience I have as a woman living on campus. If I study at the coffee shop or the library a little too late, I feel very uneasy walking back to my dorm, especially because we are an open campus. And what makes me feel actively unsafe is the fact that I don't have cell reception in most points on that walk back to my dorm. And I run the Women's Empowerment Collective on campus, and I know this is a constant experience of young women in the college. And secondly, another experience I've had is because of the pandemic, a lot of job interviews and internship interviews are being conducted over the phone. And personally, early this summer, I had an interview where the call dropped. I tried to go to a place on campus that usually has reception, but it just wasn't consistent, and I wasn't able to call back. And it's really unfortunate to miss out on opportunities because of cell reception. And I know that other students experience it as well. And finally, I'd love to talk about the international student experience. I'm an international student, and I know it's already been mentioned that it's important to have cell reception so that we can stay in contact with our families. But I think another aspect that's important is that we have certain obligations in order to maintain our status as international students. And, that often involves making sure that we can receive calls from the government if something happens, if something is needed from us. I personally was going through like a status change, and I actually ended up missing calls from my lawyer because the calls just wouldn't go through. And so it would be just really beneficial for international students to maintain their status and avoid situations like that if we had reliable cell service. So thank you so much for letting me speak on this.
Thank you, Simran.
All right, next up we have Alexandra Kate. And again, you'll need to be sworn in and state your name and address for the record, please.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Alexander Kate at 1160 Camino de Cruz, Blanca, Santa Fe, New Mexico.
Thank you.
I'm Alexander. I am also a student at the college, and I just would like to take a few moments to reemphasize what Simran was just talking about. As a student, it is really important to me to be able to keep in contact with my family, and it's just been a constant struggle for the past 3 years that I've been here. where calls, you can be sitting in the same place on campus and your call will drop. And then you can call again 2 minutes later and the call will drop again. And so the cell service is just fluctuating constantly, which is a big concern for all of those students who are either their first year away from home, whatever their situation, who just need to stay in contact with their family. So I realize that y'all have asked us to not be too repetitive. So I just really wanted to re-emphasize that. And thank you again for taking the time to listen to us.
Thank you, Alexander.
Great. So our next speaker is Madeline Carey.
Hello. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Madeline Carey. I'm the property owner and full-time resident at 1674 Camino de Cruz Blanca. And I'm like neutral on this. I just have some public comment. I opposed the monopine proposal because I think monopines are dumb and stupid and we should just look at cell towers if we have to look at them. And I'm happy for everyone whose lives will be made safer and better, and they will have an easier time getting jobs by this. It will not improve coverage at my house. I'm on the little road that coverage doesn't help where the paved road goes right. Sean, I need a new roof. If you are interested in leasing my roof and repairing it and putting a cell tower on it so my neighborhood can have cell service that talks to this tower, give me a phone call. I'd love to talk to you about it because I know all my neighbors are in the same position as St. John students. So like happy for the students, a little bit of a rub on us. My concern is a little procedural with everything, some of the big sort of high public impact design components being authorized through an MOU with the city, in particular around the rerouting of the trails. There are no marked lines on the city road that's directly adjacent to this, and the neighborhood association owns the private road and the trail that is one of the two routes that hikers take from the lot that I'm not sure what the ownership or lease relationship is between the U.S. Forest Service and the Conservation Trust and the college. And there's a whole spider web of trails that go from the parking lot sort of over to what the road association owns, which is where the site is located, as well as trails that go down into the arroyo. And there's already sort of a mild issue with folks being on the road or parking, or I park and take phone calls down there because I don't have cell service at my house and there's better cell service right there. So just like flagging that, you know, I think the neighborhood has made it clear they have a lot of design concerns, and I realize that we can be a little bit of a handful to deal with, but there's a lot of things that the city's just going to get to negotiate through the MOU that I think the neighborhood would like to have input on, a lot of which is related to things the city might need to do to mark where there might be pedestrians coming on and off the paved road, or maybe putting double yellow stripes down that paved road. The bus route goes through there, all of that stuff. So that's my 2 cents on all of this. And you know, broadly also for the city, like, I'm not sure how to give public comment in this moment that says I'm supportive of increasing connectivity, and I purchased my house knowing there's no connectivity. I worked from home with no connectivity for the past year, and I'm super interested in being a thorn in the side around thinking about like improving that for everybody, because I look at the map and I'm like, that's great, and it does nothing for me, and it's not clear if there'll ever be a proposal in the future that will improve service at my house. I'm the last house adjacent to the city property. So in terms of like responding to a wildfire, I'm one of the properties there'd be emergency response vehicles on. So it's not just like, I want to do my TikTok videos. I think there's also a public component to it. So thank you.
Thank you, Madeline.
Okay. Next up, I have Noah Rowan.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
This is Nicole and Noah Rowan at 1621 Camino de Cruz Blanca. And I have a couple of comments just to represent a different side. At other meetings on this issue, many of the neighbors, ourselves included, are not in favor of this structure on our roadway where we would drive and see it multiple times a day. I thought it was interesting in the presentation, they did not show the picture of the proposed structure. They showed some other pictures, but that was not seen. So perhaps that could be done, could be shown. I think it's very interesting that seems that St. John's is looking to benefit quite a bit from this situation for their students and their staff, and yet they did not want this structure on their campus. That's curious to me. And it does seem to me that safety of students and landline reliability, wireless internet reliability is the responsibility of the campus to provide for their students. This is a very affluent area. There's a security guard posted up at the entrance to the college almost all the time. It feels like that is something that if the college is so concerned about, which it sounds like they are, that there should be something internally done about that. Another point we'd like to make is that in reviewing the documents for this proposed structure, it will increase the coverage by 9%. So right now, coverage is 88%. The building of this tower will increase it to 98%. So we go from 88% to 98% coverage. This is not a matter of no coverage to great coverage. That I think covers my main points. Thank you very much for your time.
Thank you, Nicole.
Hey, the next speaker is Louise Yakey.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Louise Yakey. I live at 2371 Camino, Carlos Rey in Santa Fe.
Thank you.
May I just go ahead?
Yes.
I play a number of different roles at St. John's. The least of which is that I am the mother of a daughter who's studied at home last year, and she is coming to campus next month. I will tell you that when we were at the orientation a year ago, March, before COVID, there were many parents that were bent out of shape about the fact that they couldn't make telephone calls for work to family members and so on. They were walking around the campus, standing in the middle of the road near the entrance, trying to get a signal. I mean, it's just embarrassing as being someone who's from Santa Fe. I can also tell you that I do quite a bit of hiking up there, and there are many times in which there is no cell signal. And in fact, one time my husband and I got separated and I saw a rattlesnake, and I attempted to call him because he was coming back down with our dog to tell him that there was a rattlesnake, and I could not reach him. Nothing, there was nothing. It didn't go anywhere, okay? The other thing is that I run a nonprofit in town, and I hire St. John's students for mentoring and tutoring of young people in Santa Fe, elementary kids. And there are many times when I have to communicate with them about the schedule, and you can't reach them. So like Simran works for me, and sometimes she'll go, "Oh, I got your message." And it'll be like, "Simran, I sent that to you 3 days ago. This is a text message," right? The other thing I do is I run an AAUW branch up there with Simran again, and we try to get things scheduled. And it's like impossible. You almost take it personally. Like, are they ignoring me? And then we'll have guest speakers. Can't reach people to make arrangements. So this is not what we want people thinking about St. John's or about Santa Fe. And yes, I would like to think that when my daughter comes here next month, if she finds herself in a situation where she needs to reach campus security or me or Simran, right, that she can get through. This is just, it's inexcusable. It's just totally inexcusable. Thank you.
Thank you, Louise.
All right, we've got two more hands up at the moment. The next one is Malcolm Jamar Morgan.
Please unmute yourself. Thank you. Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Malcolm Jamar Morgan. I'm at 1160 Camino de Cruz, Blanca. I actually am wanted to live on staff members here at St. John's College. And so I just wanted to speak a little bit more on the aspect of the safety concerns, and mine go a little bit further than just being the events coordinator for the students. Being a senior resident, we're dealing with lots of different health issues, whether they be mental, physical, for our students. And while we do have security or public safety, up front at most times, we still struggle just from one building to the next to even get a hold of them if they're up there, in all honesty. I myself am a new father of a foster kiddo. And, just about a month ago, we had an incident where I couldn't get a hold of him. He was at work in the dining hall. I was in our apartment on campus and I thought he had run away. He had been having some mental health issues that day, and it was just a struggle to communicate. And it was a little bit embarrassing to be communicating with CYFD here in New Mexico as we were trying to initiate a search for a missing foster kid, when all it was is that he wasn't receiving my messages and my phone calls to see where he was and if he was safe. Also in that aspect, as a senior resident, as Cesar had stated earlier, we do rounds around campus, and there's been multiple situations where there's been dropped calls with EMTs, there's been dropped calls with the fire department. I myself, during COVID, came across a resident of Santa Fe who had been injured on the trail and made their way on the campus. I couldn't call security, which was up front. I had to run up to the front to get someone just to get help. And so in the incident, in the times where time may be crucial, I see this as a really big safety concern as we continue to grow as an institution, and as me as a student events coordinator continue to work with our students to build more community events and expanding programs like I'm doing with Ms. Tapa, where we're going to be working with doing some reading projects and working with the NAACP for the little free libraries around town. As we're continuing to work with the Santa Fe community and bring them onto campus, there's going to be a greater concern for them as well if some type of emergency situation were to arise. I'm very thankful that we haven't had any yet with us doing Music on the Hill during the summers, but I'm looking forward to hopefully remedying these situations so I don't have to do a 10-minute hike to call Cesar when there's an emergency and there's no Wi-Fi on campus. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Malcolm.
So our next speaker is going to be George Wilson.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I do.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
Hi, my name is George Wilson. I'm a property owner at 1615 Camino de Cruz, Blanca. I'm also kind of neutral with this. I think that the need for, improved safety in the area is critical. My concern is that I'm not sure this is actually improving safety. As we've heard, it doesn't necessarily increase the coverage as some people would expect it to. I haven't heard anybody state that if this cell tower were built and you were actually on the trail system, that you would be able to place a call. I would love for that to be true because my house is actually very close to there. My best reception actually happens to be on the roof of my house. And so I totally understand the need for having better connectivity. It was also mentioned the technologies that are out there with 4G and 5G. As far as the campus is concerned, they can very easily look at 5G nodes to actually provide safety within the campus, but that isn't being talked about. It is interesting that the campus has many possible locations, and what's unclear here is whether or not this is the best location for the community or the best location for the campus. If the campus wants to really partner with the community and solve this problem correctly so that we get absolute cell coverage throughout the Wilderness Gate area, up through the trail system, up to where my house is on Camino Cruz Blanca, then let's find the optimal location. I mean, we've already reduced the height of the tower, and apparently we did that and we weren't concerned about safety there either, because a higher tower would give us better coverage. So again, I feel like we're talking about safety, but we're not solving the right problem. And what I would ask the commission to look at is to ask those tough questions of how do we solve this correctly? I think we're all in favor of improving safety for the community, but I'm not sure that we have found the right solution. And I know we've been at this for many years, but if the college is actually willing to partner with the community and we're willing to solve this the right way, I think we can come up with a solution that gives us the safety and the infrastructure that we need in order to move the city forward. Thank you.
Thank you, George.
And I do have one more raised hand, and that is Ruben Romero.
Okay, if anybody else would like to testify on this, please raise your hand. Go ahead, Mr. Romero.
Okay, do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Mr. Romero?
Ruben, you look unmuted, but we're not able to hear you. Now you look muted. You may need to adjust your microphone settings on Zoom. Make sure your audio setting is turned up on the microphone side.
Mr. Romero, why don't you mess around with your settings? In the meantime, we'll get back to you. We do have a call-in, *9 to unmute yourself if you'll promote them, Sally.
Sure. On our end, I've unmuted a phone number that ends in 3011. So if you're our call-in person, I'm hoping you can unmute on your side. I've never actually done this myself on a phone, but you got your hand raised. Let's see.
I believe they have to press *9.
Yeah, I think *9 raises the hand, and then I don't know if it's...
Oh, I'm sorry.
No worries, Melissa. Thank you. Let's see. I keep clicking ask to unmute over here, which I'm hoping is giving you a notification on your end, but, oh, there you are. You look like you're unmuted. You could please be sworn in and state your name and address for the record.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Jamie Polk, P-O-L-K. I live at 736 Calle Resplendor in Los Miradores, directly across from the proposed site. And I just wanted to agree with Mr. Wilson that I don't think we've looked at the optimal location for this, and I don't understand why the college wants to and the developer want to jam the location directly against Los Miradores. Surely there's a better location on the campus or on one of their buildings, hidden like St. John's Church. So I wanted Sean Milk to speak to that. Why can't we put it somewhere on the campus instead of directly across from our community?
Mr. Polk, go ahead and keep your testimony going, and we will ask him that question for you.
Thank you. And secondly, I know the Historic Review Board has turned this down. So how does that square with this hearing going forward?
Okay. Anything else, Mr. Polk?
No.
Okay, just stay on the line and we'll get some answers to your questions. Thank you so much. Sally, Ruben? Romero,
I'm not seeing Ruben on here anymore, and I'm wondering if perhaps he signed off and might be signing back on. So I'll keep an eye out for him. But in the meantime, oh, I had a Rennie who wanted to speak. Rennie, did you change your mind?
Yeah, anybody else that wants to speak with the exception of Ruben, if he comes back, please raise your hand.
I do have Rennie unmuted. You'll have to unmute on your end as well. You look like you've done it. Okay, and please be sworn in and state your name and address.
Do you swear under the penalty of perjury that the testimony you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes.
Thank you. Please state your name and address for the record.
My name is Renette Finley. I live in Los Miradores at 1215 La Rambla, which is quite close to the proposed site, but not directly opposite. And I just want to second and reinforce what Mr. Jamie Polk said and what Mr. Wilson said. I would like to know why it has to be at this spot on St. John's. And I would like to know how this fit in with the Historical Design Review Board. And I want to say also that I think the safety of hikers and the convenience of St. John's students and family is very important, and that the whole problem should be addressed in the community, probably by the way Mr. Wilson suggested. That's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Renette. Anybody else want to testify on this?
See, I still don't see Ruben.
I see no other hands up. Do you?
That appears to be everyone.
Okay, thank you. What we'll do then is close the public hearing. If Ruben gets back with us, we'll reopen it for Ruben. Does that work?
Sounds good, Chair. Thank you.
Okay, so the public hearing's been closed and I will turn it over to the commission. While the commissioners are raising their hand, Mr. Esquivel, Nicole asked for a photograph. Is that something that you can put up for us?
Sure.
From your presentation?
I have can everybody see that? This is the image from Exhibit G10 that is located inside the commission's packet. So this would be a picture of what the applicant is proposing for that area from one vantage point. There are several vantage points within Exhibit 10 that the commission has the ability to look at, and I'm sure you have.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Esquivel. Don't see any hands, so I'll go ahead and ask a few of the questions that were asked. Oh, I'm sorry, Commissioner Garcia, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, looking at a couple of things, this question, I guess, would be for Sean, Mr. Mills. How did you guys determine, and I heard you talk about using drones and things of that nature to find the best possible placement of this tower, and what makes this site, again, the best, the best choice for that?
Yeah, we use software called Propagation Studies, and essentially, when this came back up several years ago, when the old mayor of Santa Fe, declared almost a national emergency, AT&T had a pretty strong initiative to start this project back up, after I had personally failed with getting it approved in and around 2010, 2011. So they basically give us direction on the triangulation of the existing sites, which is the sites that this one would talk to. and providing me with the direction as to where would be the optimum location to put the site so that it could communicate with the other cell sites, which we call S246, which is the St. John's Methodist Church, and at the same time covering about 99% of the college campus, as well as the other surrounding areas and neighborhoods. It is not a 9% increase. It's a significant increase. One of the questions was, will it cover the trails? 100%. Will my phone work? If you have AT&T, it will work. We are designing the tower to accommodate Verizon, T-Mobile, Dish Network, and of course AT&T, and we've already been in discussions with those carriers. If this does get approved, they're going to want to co-locate to provide coverage in the area.
So given that statement, somebody asked if this is the best location for the community and the best location for the college. Can you say that that is, through your studies, the best?
It is. It's 100% the best location without a shadow of a doubt. We looked at, I think, between 9 and 12 different locations. We looked at the water tank that was up on the hill. It was too high and shot. Literally, the signals were shooting over the college and the community. We looked at every single building. We looked at going down to the high school. I proposed a site there. We looked 10 years ago on the other side of the dorms, and it did not meet the coverage objective for AT&T and FirstNet. This, without a shadow of a doubt, is the best and optimal location for the coverage objective and for the community.
Thank you. You mentioned that the monopine would have been a 40-foot tall structure. Is that correct?
No, it was a 85-foot proposed structure.
85 foot. So this monopole is around the 40-foot range. Is that what I heard?
65.
I'm sorry?
65 feet.
65. Okay. I had.
The trees are about 40, 42, 45 feet tall. So we have to be above the tree line.
And then I guess the last question I would have is, somebody did ask or make the statement that the Historic Review Board looked at this and turned it down. Is that correct, or who can answer that?
They turned down.
Commissioner Garcia, I think we'll probably have Sally answer that one from the city side. Mr. Milks, you can chime in if you like, but
thank you.
Thank you.
Chair Garcia, did you want me to, Chair Gutierrez, did you want me to go ahead and answer that now?
Yes, why don't you answer that, please?
Okay. Thanks, Chair, Commissioners. So there was an initial application that was presented to the Historic Board. That was last summer. I believe the final decision of the board came out in August, and the board did deny the application. In that case, there needed to be some waivers, which are sort of like variances, but they're telecommunications waivers to height. And in that case, the board didn't find enough had been presented in terms of alternative siting and coverage, that there was a significant gap in coverage that needed to be filled. But the city's rules do not preclude folks from filing successive applications. We do allow landowners to receive multiple entitlements for one piece of property and pursue various development objectives and keep various development approvals valid, as long as you can't build more than one thing, obviously, at the same time in the same place. But we do allow that. This is an amended second application. We do have In that first case, there was also more than one location under consideration. This has been narrowed down to a single location, and the height has been lowered and the proposed design has changed. So this will have to go to the H board. Still, I do believe we are putting that right now on an agenda for July, I want to say 13th. It's the first meeting in July of the H board. So they have a similar authority to the Planning Commission, but slightly different. They've got a couple of different factors that they look at, and they are reviewing this sort of height waiver through the lens of the historic district. So that will still need to happen. It's scheduled for a couple of weeks from now. And then the other thing that's kind of happening simultaneously is in the first round, as far as I know, the Section 106 process, which is required by the National Historic Preservation Act, had not been initiated. So on this second round, I know this time the applicant has initiated that process. So that does require consultation with the State Historic Preservation Office. And so they're looking at this, and we're kind of at a stage where there will, before this can go forward, there will need to be a memorandum of understanding between the Federal Communications Commission, our SHPO, as we call the State Historic Preservation Office. The city is participating as a consulting party. So I know there were some things in the memo that kind of also spoke to that other piece of the historic review stuff. The reason that's triggered is due to the state finding an adverse effect on the campus, which is a nationally registered historic property. So that's the other kind of historic piece that's happening.
Thank you, Sally. Commissioners, any questions from commissioners? Mr. Milks, so we were given a 10% number. You said it's far above and beyond that. What is the actual number? From 88% to 98% is what we heard.
Yeah, there's no way to know until the site is actually built. Everything is speculatory, but talking with our RF engineers, it's going to be significantly better, significantly increased in coverage and capacity. You know, the closest site is a lot lower and over 1.5 miles away. So that right there should be the main point of it.
Thank you. Commissioners, any questions? If there's no questions, if somebody wants to put their hand up for a motion. Commissioner Setenia? Oh, go ahead.
I apologize. I did want to note that I do have a hand raised. I don't know if it might possibly be the name on there is not, who are we waiting for? Ruben Romero?
Ruben Romero, yes.
I have someone signed in as Pam Howard, and so I don't know if you wanted me to check in with that person before wrapping up.
If it's Ruben Romero with Pam Howard, yes, that's fine. We'll let them testify. If not, it's been closed.
Okay, so I'm checking in with Pam Howard. If you want to unmute and let us know. The public hearing has been closed, but due to the technical difficulties we had with Ruben, we're checking to see if he's with you.
Okay, this is Bo Howard, her husband. Can you hear me?
We can.
Yes, Mr. Howard. However, we closed the public portion of the hearing. So I'm sorry, we won't be able to hear your testimony.
Sorry as well.
Thank you.
Okay, I just wanted to check because I know you were looking to see if that person could rejoin us.
Thank you so much. Commissioner Setenia.
Yeah, I'll make a motion. I move to approve the telecommunication facility under subsection 14-6.2E, subject to conditions of approval recommended by staff. Also move to approve the waiver to height pursuant to subsection 14-6.2E8, subject to conditions of approval recommended by staff. And finally, move to approve the findings of fact and conclusions of law listed in Exhibit A.
Thank you, Commissioner Setenia. If I can get a second.
Commissioner Garcia will second that.
Thank you, Commissioner Garcia. Once again, we're okay to group them all, Sally, and if anybody has any objections, they can
Yes,
state them.
Chair, I would agree. I agree that that's fine. If anyone wants to move to split motions at any time, you can, but as long as we have a very clear record of what's being moved and voted on, I think we're good.
Thank you. Secretary Cloud, were you going to say something? No? Okay, if we can have a roll call vote, please.
Yes, Commissioner Cloud.
Yes, and I just want to explain, that's based on the fact that it's going to historic and also going to state historic.
Thank you. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes.
Commissioner Hogan.
Yes.
Commissioner Picarello.
Yes.
Commissioner Setenia.
Yes.
The motion has been approved.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody that attended. Okay, moving on, we're on staff communications.
I don't know if everybody knows our new land use director, so I'm going to take the liberty of introducing him just in case. We have Jason Kluk here. He has been our assistant land use director for the last couple of years or so, and he's been working for the city for much longer than that. He's got a wealth of experience at the city, and he is taking over as our acting interim land use director now that Eli has ventured over to California. So I'll let Jason introduce himself further and say hello.
Yeah, just pleased to meet you all. I'm happy to be here and support you all however I can. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Kluk. Any other staff communications?
The other thing I guess I would mention is that we are having ongoing conversations about moving back to City Hall. We're starting to slowly transition employees back into the office. We're setting a date for City Hall to open its front doors with a host up front who will be directing traffic to various parts of the city facilities, and governing body has started operating, I don't know if you've seen them, in a hybrid model, which means that the councilors are present down at City Hall. Meanwhile, staff and members of the public have still been presenting remotely, but that does require some sort of added personnel and resources and technology. So I think there was some desire certainly for this group to move to that around the same time, but so far we haven't figured out, you know, the few of us that are helping to run these meetings are also kind of critical to participating, and we don't have at this time an extra AV person. So all this to say that I think we will be staying virtual for July for land use boards. So our next meeting on July 15th, I have every expectation it will be all virtual. There is a pretty good likelihood that by about August, we will be either potentially in person, or we'll have figured out a way to adequately staff that hybrid format. So we'll certainly keep you posted on that, but we're approaching changes. As I think I must have told you, our ability to continue all virtual does require an ongoing state of emergency. We do have one issued by the governor that goes through, well, her order is a little confusing, but July 21st or 31st. I think the city is going to implement another limited emergency order to get us through at least this group's next meeting, so.
Thank you, Sally. And just for clarity, once we're given orders to go back in person, we can't have virtual and in person.
So the law,
right? It's either all or none.
Yeah, right now, I think we need under city ordinance a declared emergency for commissioners to attend virtually at all. I think that we could potentially amend our ordinance to be as flexible as state law, which then I think the rule would be if it's impossible or impractical for someone to attend in person, that person could attend remotely as long as everyone can hear you and we know when you're talking. So if somebody's, you know, far away or sick or has some reason why they couldn't attend in person, you know, we could say, well, this person, it's impossible or almost impossible or whatever it says. It might be impossible or impractical for them to attend. But right now, under the Open Meetings Act, you need to have a city rule that allows virtual attendance to allow any of that under the Open Meetings Act. And our city rule links that ability to having an ongoing declared emergency. So under the current status, if our emergency goes away, commissioners will not be able to attend remotely under the Open Meetings Act.
Thank you. Moving on, matters from the commission. Listed is the policy subcommittee update, but Chair Faulkner's not with us. Is there anybody from that subcommittee that wants to give an update?
I'll give just a real brief one. I think that the priority is going to be the marijuana ordinance. And so next week we're meeting and we'll be addressing that with the help of Sally.
Thank you. I was going to say the same thing, and sort of at a broader level, just so everybody's kind of in the loop, city management and leadership is starting to meet and have those sort of policy discussions about how the city will handle cannabis ordinance amendments. So I think the zoning is certainly a very big piece of that. So I'm picturing this subcommittee as being really the experts in terms of what is the scope of the city's regulatory authority to zone cannabis. We've been delegated some authority, but not a ton. But these are the types of policy decisions within zoning that the city can make, and then what sort of choices might we recommend that the city make, and where might we plug those amendments into Chapter 14. This group being so well-versed in the land development code, I think you're really well suited to look at what parts of the existing land use code might need to be amended to accommodate the policy choices made by the city in terms of zoning. So.
Thank you. Any other commissioners?
I appreciate the explanation on that, Sally, because I was wondering, why are we weighing in on the recreational marijuana issue? What does that have to do with land use? But from a zoning perspective, I can see that making sense.
And ultimately, all amendments to our land use code do need to go before the Planning Commission. So you'll have a small group who's going to become, well-versed and be able to help get it through that Planning Commission review process and sort of really start that sort of technical and academic consideration. Ultimately, of course, we're not the policy decision makers. We'll have to have some bill sponsors and some direction from city leadership, but it'll be interesting to think about what can we regulate and what might be good ideas. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners? I don't see any. So commissioners, have a safe, healthy, and happy 4th of July weekend. Thank you all for showing up, and we are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all very much. Have a nice evening.